culture of humanism and aesthetic judgment, kultura ng pagkatao at maloobing paningin. Mayroon na ba ang UP nito? Makikita na ba natin to sa mga graduate ng UP, sa ating mga alumni? Pagkatao, panlasa, palaisipan, pananaw. Are we any different from others? According to Hegel, difference is defined by limits of what one is not. But difference itself is not the path to wisdom. Instead, it is the appreciation and rationalization of the specificities of difference with the exercise of moral and aesthetic sensibility that enable us to formulate our own philosophical knowledge and translate that knowledge into positive action. We must draw the essential energies from these differences in empowering the spirit and heightening one's intellectual and aesthetic consciousness. I do not believe that the role of this university is simply to replicate or adapt pre-existing knowledge as praxis, or to provide a conduit between prefabricated constructs and the manufacture of a distinct humanistic culture. Before a set of modalities can be conceptualized in specialized knowledge building, one must have a clear strategy in accumulating and processing information into its own self-determined humanistic and cultural matrix. How do we relate and reconcile intellectual and humanistic experience and aesthetic sensibilities in UP with the world where we are living in? For example, what's the difference between Beethoven's Ninth Symphony and the lugub of Aurora Jawaling and Sarah ng Embolo? Or what does Bill Gates' Microsoft empire have to do with the dangsam music of or the teachings of Karl Marx and a mansaka lullaby? And what does the study of law have to do with the spirit possession of the Sanghyang ritual from Cavite? Or is there a profound meaning that lies between the space shuttle technology and the balagtasan and the komedya?
Ako po ay makata, mayamang-mayaman sa tula at taba.
Between the squatter's relocation and studying in Harvard or Oxford? Or how does one measure prestige between being published by Routledge and being able to perform on the Kulimpang and Batokyan? Or what does Hollywood and Broadway have to do with the UP Centennial? These incongruities and differences in meaning and significance can of course be easily synthesized by the metaphorization of their essential qualities. What is more difficult is to homologize the intrinsic values and phenomenological significance of these disparate human endeavors and conditions into one experiential matrix. With a dynamic and functioning habitus or sariling bait, such cross-disciplinary processing of information can refigure social thought. It eventually provides and enhances the parameters for engendering humanism and aesthetic judgment among the graduates of this university to situate themselves and their own relevance and productive usefulness in their own time and space. In this regard, the pursuit of knowledge is not only premised on the predisposition to ask questions about something that is not known, but more importantly, to question things that are known. From the time that this university was founded 100 years ago, how many questions and what kinds of questions has it propounded of itself and unto itself? What are the tools of learning that we have used or evolved to gain knowledge of humanity itself and our very own humanism and selfhood? What are the books that we read? What are the songs that we listen to and sing? And when we write our own books and compose our own songs, what is the selfness that they convey in terms of the individual vis-a-vis collective consciousness? Morality and aesthetic judgment also emerge when we challenge intuition with intelligence, universal practice with local wisdom, and when we set limits to tolerance with creative imagination, when we are able to discern when creation and innovation become destruction and deconstruction, and vice versa, or when development leads to counterproduction. It is exploring more profoundly one's extended heritage, where behavior and taste may be meaningfully explained outside the realms of superimposed orthodoxies. Aesthetic judgment is a process of affective valuation in a system of differences, not only based on material criteria as have been promulgated by colonialism and globalization, but by the very lifestyles and cultures which UP and its constituents should be historically and genealogically privy to. A UP graduate must be able to discriminate truth from fallacy, between symbolic knowledge and intimate knowledge, and eventually formulate a knowledge that is generative and creates a new epistemic order and space beyond itself. Critical and effective appraisal of difference does not necessarily favor the rare and the inaccessible over the many and the popular, but also finds value in the common sense, which is practiced in everyday life. The value of a rare object vis-a-vis the mundane and the commonplace is not only dependent on its material impact in a given social space, but also in its symbolic manifestation of difference as a product of human labor, its cultural work, and its agency to uplift emotion and aggrandize the spirit. By exploring colloquial or local wisdom, university education will be able to find uncontrived order and even uncharted notions of beauty, cosmic reality, as well as moral and spiritual consciousness. By virtue of sariling bait, one must be able to rise above the dynamics of social and societal realities, whether they are brought about by global trends, by local perception and taste, or by oral, unwritten wisdom and intangible beliefs through time and space. In other words, by one's own spirit self. How does one define poverty, for example? What is poverty in its metaphoric or metamorphic sense? When we adopted the term poverty and allowed ourselves to be classified as a third world people, we have admitted a state of inferiority within the material order of things as promulgated by our colonial masters. Has UP made any effort in extricating ourselves from such state of consciousness? In this regard, UP may need to refocus its intellectual and philosophical labors on the exploration of humanism from an orthodox intellectual domain, like ancient traditions, beliefs, societal dynamics, and alternative concepts of time and space. I refer again to the philosophical writings of Jose Maceda, which advocates the concept of time in Southeast Asia that can spawn different kinds of reasoning, not based on causality and precision, but on doubt, on humility, patience, and other attributes of the human spirit. This strongly suggests to explore other temporal sensibilities that relate to one's sense of motion, space, change, entropy, human action, consciousness, and eventually construct a particular logic that can engender a unique wisdom through a reformulation of social thought. According to Clifford Geertz, indigenous knowledge, or the primitive path, may be a source of remedial wisdom, a prosthetic corrective for a damaged spiritual life, an image that has governed a good deal of humanist thought and education. Revisiting the past tells us that human knowledge and its applications did not have artificial boundaries that we now exercise. People then were in closer harmony with nature and the cosmos. The wholeness of human knowledge was the natural order of things, essentialized by what Lao Tse calls the unity of the universal and the leveling of differences. In more concrete terms, cultures of expression and expressive productions are not only representations of culture as a whole, but partly because of their highly functional role in the course of community life, these repertoires of human expression such as songs, architectural designs, dresswear, and ritual also serve as mirrors to a deeper understanding of society in terms of its biocultural evolution, history, language, social organization, healing practices, and even technological knowledge vis-a-vis their metaphysical and spiritual worldview. Even contemporary issues such as gender and sexuality, politics and ethnicity, while recently emerged out of Western paradigms in egalitarianism and liberational democracy, have always been embedded in the sociocultural mores and practices of cultures outside the West, even before modern Western civilization emerged. In idealizing human life in general, and Filipino-ness in particular, this university, instead of mirroring its outside world, should reference itself to values that are rooted in one's own cultural wellspring and unwritten philosophies of being. UP's mandate to serve in building a nation cannot be premised on simply putting in place the organs of governance and alien modes of self-expression, but rather in exercising selective judgment towards strengthening this institution's moral fiber and cosmic identity. This condition shall formulate the parameters and design both the vision and structures of leadership, governance, and everyday functioning as an institution with unsullied honor and self-dignity. It is therefore in this context that I propose to celebrate, if you may, the UP Centennial, not merely as an ending of a historical period and the beginning of another, but the dawning of an age, characterized by humble reflection and resolve towards an era of new enlightenment. Quoting Lao Tse again, light can only come from darkness. In setting up the new infrastructures in the pursuit of such enlightenment in this university, one could take cognizance of the fact that visions of a more holistic cultivation of mind and spirit were already beginning to be articulated by some post-World War II or post-Second Independence administration. The vision of Vidal Tan advocated the awareness for science and moral responsibility, spirituality, and heritage. Critical thinking and culture were advanced by Vicente Cinco. Traditional cultures, traditional technology, and expressive cultures by Edgardo Angara. Language and local civilization by Jose Abueva. The sciences, the arts, and grassroots wisdom by Emil Javier. In the last 2 decades, a kind of postmodern consciousness has begun to unfold in this university, as some of its constituents are now striving to decentralize the responsibility to disseminate liberal learning from disciplinal territory.